So you all have been hearing about this new REVOLV product, which is a hybrid hyperconverged infrastructure product Jason had mentioned before. This is our new product offering. This is the BCD entry into hyperconverged. We feel as though we have a hell of a product and a lot of experience to be able to bring this to bear. What is it made of? As Jason said, there are three main products in the line, the hardware products: the Deep Store Lite, the standard Deep Store, Deep Store Plus. Professor G is not a part of the product line, although he is available for parties. The main difference between the three is simply in the capabilities therein. Deep Store Lite, as Jason said, gives a bit of a lower entree point. It still provides all of the HCI benefits, still allows for the use of the harmonized software suite. Then you have the standard Deep Store, and then the REVOLV Deep Store Plus. These are all highly redundant, high availability systems. The harmonized software suite itself, this is where I am very, very proud to say BCD has some IP, and BCD has worked very hard to create. What it all amounts to is the harmonized conductor providing you as the user or your end user the ability to manage and maintain HHCI-based systems from within the video management system. So from within Security Center itself. Harmonize is really broken into 6 pieces, the first being conductor, the other 5 you see in front of you. They all have names that, relatively speaking, describe what they do. But without going into gory detail, because we can save that for Thursday of next week when we have the technical deep dive, you will be able to do virtually anything without leaving the comfort of your standard VMS GUI. So a disk failure alarm, a failed system alarm, storage information, etc. All be available without leaving your VMS. And we feel that this is a huge, huge benefit to any of our collective customers considering hybrid hyperconverged infrastructure, because it's comfortable and because it makes this system a security product every bit as much as an IT product. One of the things that is going to separate HHCI from what you would call a traditional hyperconverged infrastructure is very simple. It's our ability to add storage without affecting the compute part. For those of you who are at least relatively unaware of HCI type infrastructures, a traditional HCI infrastructure does require you effectively purchase an entire second node just to expand the storage. Not so with the REVOLV line. We can expand any of our products into the petabyte range without affecting the computing or the memory on the computing nodes themselves. This is a huge benefit in our business, where the most common reason to expand storage is a changing retention rate or even a change in how you're viewing those cameras that are attached. Professor G, our friend and yours, is very happy to say that he expects final certification of this product with Genetec to be well north of 2,000 megabits per second. So I'll leave that up there to let that soak in for a second. Professor G has reported back to us that our certification number will be north of 2,000 megabits per second. That would be on a standard Deep Store. So a single one of our product line will be able to achieve that, and potentially more. We all know BCD. Even for the years I've been in the business, when I was a competitor, I knew BCD. I knew BCD servers and storage. I knew that BCD was a remarkably solid company, and it's a value proposition. All of you who are on this call likely know this, having dealt with the company that Jeff founded so many years ago. Solid company with a history and reputation of service and support. We think this means something today in an industry where there have been fly-by-night style players and where people tend or can legitimately be afraid of a new technology. We'd like to point out, and we often do point out, that BCD has a reputation for solidity. 1999 until now, and not going anywhere except up. The common infrastructure point that all of us exist in is reminded to all of us by a slide like this, which I realize is horribly ugly. One of the benefits of HCI is the ability to get rid of some of this. Certainly not all of it, but some of it. HCI and HHCI can allow you to consolidate and as you converge. There is it was funny when I first became aware of and got into HCI, I wondered, well, what in the world is the difference between hybrid and hyperconverged and converged solutions? And I found a really good analogy that I've taken to use as I've trained the internal BCD people on this type of product. And it's very simple. A converged solution is a lot like an unbaked pie or a cake, where all the ingredients are still separate. You can change them out. If you need more sugar, you can add or take away or whatever. Everything's gathered nicely together for you. In a hyperconverged solution, strictly hyperconverged solution, all those ingredients are baked together. There's no way to add more sugar or pull out the sugar or change the flour or even the taste. The fact is, you are done once it's baked. If you want to add more sugar, you have to bake another cake. So what we have attempted to do, and we'll get into this again, is we have attempted to show you what happens when you take an infrastructure and make it a hybrid infrastructure. Just so everyone has a general understanding of this type of system as you look at this particular slide, the evolution of convergence. How did we get here, and how did we wind up at this type of a point? Well, the bottom line is, for years and years and years, the industry has been, and this is, I think, all technical hardware-based industries. I need less hardware. I need less things in my space. I have X amount of rack space. I only have X amount of power. Well, that pushed us along the convergence trail. It's obviously significantly more complex and story-like than I'm indicating. But we got here for many reasons, not the least of which is we wanted to get away from things being complicated and complex from a physical perspective and making them more simplistic. The following, and all this will be available post presentation, by the way. David alluded to it. Again, when you think about a hybrid infrastructure, a hybrid hyperconverged infrastructure, and virtual machines and virtual this and that, it's really not complicated. Just imagine you have one of your kids has an Oculus Rift on their face and they're playing on a computer in virtual reality. It's a lot like that. Your virtual machines can get real viruses and have real Windows blue screens of death, and this is why having the failover capabilities built into VM, in addition to the failover capabilities within a VMS like Genetec Security Center, is so powerful, because virtualization doesn't protect you from failures in and of itself. Kind of gives you another look at convergence and hyperconvergence, and it's talking about the same thing, the difference between converged and hyperconverged, and why hybrid gives you the best of both worlds in doing that. We've all talked about this both on this in this area, and also David mentioned it, David Gray. Why would a customer want this? Why would any of your customers who've never mentioned it or are just starting to mention it want it? Well, without getting into too much detail, each one of these bullets is why REVOLV is here, why the Deep Store product is here. We're going to reduce the hardware needs of the end user. We're going to reduce their hardware footprint, which over time gives you a much more efficient total cost of ownership. While it is true that sometimes the people who don't pay for electricity don't care, most of them do. And as you are all aware, a server room full of equipment needs power and cooling and all the things that create high costs of ownership. We want to get in and cut that down. The system is easily scalable. I would bet the majority of people on this webinar have had an end user who had multiple different systems spread across multiple different locations and has dealt with how difficult it can be to scale those systems up, especially when operators aren't interested in changing or moving or learning. Hybrid HCI helps with that. It makes a system much easier to scale as you consolidate onto a single platform. We can reduce power, that's part of the TCO. The scalable pool of resources. One of the hallmarks of any hyperconverged infrastructure is we're sharing resources. This is why hybrid, again, is such an important point. We don't need to waste resources when we increase storage. Those resources are there for a reason. One of the things that isn't covered is I just need to increase my storage pool because my retention time just went from 90 to 120 days. But these are all the parts of the hyperconverged and the hybrid hyperconverged infrastructure that brings us to REVOLV. It's a bit of a humorous point, but REVOLV actually does stand for Revolutionizing Enabled Virtual Optimized Low Latency Video. We're perfectly happy if you just refer to this as REVOLV. Jason had mentioned several times, and we will reiterate again, the strong partnerships not only with Genetec, and David Gray, again, thank you very much for your participation, but also with Dell and VMware. The systems that we are bringing to market are enhanced by these partnerships. They are made better by all of these partnerships, and they're going to allow us to bring a product to market that we believe is the best of its kind in the market, but also the best supported of its kind. We know as BCD that we can support the product line. We also know that standing behind us are two major worldwide enterprises, and I would include Genetec in this just from the security center standpoint, who can also support their part of it. Once you're using VMware, you're safe because you know VMware is always going to be there to support you. And if you use Dell versus a third-party OEM manufacturer, you know Dell's always going to be here to support you. So we're proud to have chosen Dell, VMware, Genetec, all to be the partners as we roll REVOLV out into the market in an initial format. So again, we're back to our Professor G, so I can again remind you of the different types of deep stores. I will point out that no one has asked the question, but there is in front of you 3 different products in the product line. Hybrid HCI is to some degree a bit of a customizable platform in that no 2 installations will generally be alike. So we have already worked with end users on slight modifications to how one product might look. So don't think that we are simply suggesting this is a one-size-fits-all. It's not. We, of course, understand that every customer has their own challenges, and we are more than happy to stand up and deal with those challenges as they come up. One thing I do want to as we close up, and we'll bring Jason Glover back in, one of the things I do want to point out to all of our attendees here is the fact that when you look at the word harmonize and you look at the REVOLV logo, we believe that security is IT ready. We believe that any of our security integration friends and colleagues and coworkers is more than capable of working with and managing a hybrid, hyperconverged infrastructure platform. Our customers as well. And we believe as a company that we can walk with our partners, which includes customers, et cetera, across whatever bridge people have accused IT of using or security of using to divide themselves. We have all been told for years that these parts of our worlds are coming together, and they may very well be. But our side of the industry is more than capable of dealing with HCI, just as the IT side can learn to deal with the massive, call them issues, that can come when you have hundreds and hundreds of cameras across a single network. The warranty information, just so you know, is fairly standard as relates to what BCD does. We stand behind all of our products with all of our normal warranty, including the keep your own hard drive. Bear in mind that the products that use, for example, a VMware, they do come with full VMware support. So you have multiple feelings of goodness about what to do if in fact something needs attention from the manufacturer. So as we started with, and as I will close out my screen, a week from Thursday, we will be having a very technical deep dive into the entire product line. It will be with our own Darren Giacomini. I hope I said his last name right.
You did.
It will be with Darren Giacomini. We will take a very, very close look into the technology. It will be by invitation only, so you will need to submit through the website, or you're welcome to email either through the Q&A or emailing revolve@bcdinc.com, and we'll be happy to set you up and schedule you for this webinar. So I'm now going to have Jason come back in, and add some follow-up before we head on towards Maureen Carlo and some very interesting conversations with her?
Scott, appreciate it. As always, fabulous job on the explanation. Kind of gives everybody I think, a pretty good overview as far as where we're headed with Revolve and where the kind of state of the platform is right now and where the state of potentially, where the industry's at right now. So I think at this time, was there any questions, Scott? I didn't look to see. Doesn't look like there's any.
At this point, I think people have taken what we've been saying as the gospel and have
Well, that's either really good or really bad. I'm not really sure.
If you do have any questions, I would encourage you to type them up. We will be happy to answer the ones that are answerable here. Here's a good one from an anonymous attendee. Last year, there was a pitch for scale compute clusters. The advantages of this were the simplicity of the software and the lack of licensing requirements. VMware is a big beast of a software, and there are people who make a living on becoming VMware experts. I realize BCD may be VMware experts, but we like to be self-sustaining. And I am afraid with VMware that won't be achievable. How will we be able to support this in-house?
That is a fabulous question. I will somewhat answer that as best as I can. I don't know if Josh is on the line too. He might want to chime in after I.
Before you, to our anonymous questioner, we will answer you live. I'll also invite Josh to come in and help us with this. Let me unmute him.
So I think while you're unmuting him, I think the biggest thing from a VM perspective is that, yes, it can be very daunting. You could also say that from a VMS perspective, whether it was Milestone, Genetec, what have you, when you get into a large enterprise architecture, you're gonna have a complex system in general. I think one of the things that Josh and Darren and Eugene and the team have been working on are utilizing templates and other things of that nature. And I think the idea, and Josh, if you can hear me, please chime in here. I think the idea is to be able to template a lot of these things out so that the normal security integrator is going to be able to pick this up and run with it.
Yeah, Jason, obviously the goal is to have a lot of that built in the VMS platform itself so it can be maintained inside of there. But yeah, we plan on templating everything out so it's easy to scale out. If you need to add archivers or access managers or anything like that, it's easily to do, and it's already pretty much pre-built. Obviously, then we also have the VMware support behind it. So we don't expect the integrator or the end users to be VMware experts, but we're also here to help as well. So that's part of the whole tech support thing.
That's a great point. And I think when you start to look at some of the other entities that are there that have come into the space and are, have either struggled or are no longer here, they tried to do a lot of that on their own from a customization standpoint. And, you could argue that it didn't work and it didn't work well at all. And I think when you alleviate a lot of that pain by sticking to a standard and you have partners such as Dell and VMware, it opens it up to allow for, for potential bad deployment. You literally are mitigating all of those risks. Having those two entities in your corner really allow for us to do a lot of this from an automation standpoint, and a lot of the templates to be rolled out and to be managed in a much easier fashion than what you may see with some of our competitors.
And Jason, I think another point to throw out there is that going this route really enabled us to, lack of a better term, is drive the Ferrari, where scale kind of held us back from that throughput that we really wanted to get to. So I think that's another point worth mentioning.
Great point, Josh.
By the way, Josh, just so all of you know, Josh is our...
What? Oh, you wanted me to answer that?
Besides, one of the brainiacs in the group.
Josh is our director of, what is it, Josh? Technical deployments?
Services.
Yeah, there you go. Technical services. Sorry.
To the anonymous questioner, one of the things I would like you to do in terms of getting this answer is you can visit the website, but it's all about the harmonized software suite. It's all about the ability to provide to the user a GUI interface that they're familiar with, that they understand, and baking into that as much complexity as we can. You can't call it a Staples easy button because that would way oversimplify what you need to be able to do. But by the same token, we're trying to create a system that doesn't require you to have a certificate from VMware either. There are certainly layers of VMware that nobody but a VMware person can deal with, and we understand that. But you also, it would be unfair to one of our users to roll out a product and say, here it is, and by the way, you really need to understand VMware, it won't work at all. So the middle of the road is harmonized software suite. We are trying to take care of everything we can for you that we can take care of. That's where the part comes in. We have another question from Ledvan Bahari, and I apologize if I have screwed up that name. As this is a joint solution by BCD, Dell, and VMware, I am assuming REVOLV will utilize EMC storage solutions acquired by Dell. Is there a plan to utilize other storage vendors, i.e. NetApp, HP, in this HHCI solution?
Scott, you want me to take that or you want to?
Either way is fine with me. Knock yourself.
It's the same answer, so go ahead. So yeah, I mean, the point here is that the way that the architecture has been put in place is the SAN on the back side is interchangeable. So we based our original design and kind of our go-to-market on the ME storage. You could, in very, very easy theory, change that to an Isilon platform or to some other third-party storage as well, whether that be NetApp or some other storage array. Obviously, as those kinds of things come up, there's testing and things that needs to be done in regards to that. So for right now, what we're promoting is this kind of packaged system that we have tested and certified to the architecture that seems to be the most prevalent to the speeds that we want to run at.
Would you characterize REVOLV as a joint solution or a solution by BCD that specializes in using things provided by Dell and VMware?
Yeah, I think that it's important that this is a BCD brainchild, and this is from, and I think I've said this a few times, and Scott, I think you have, and Jeff has, but this has been a team effort from the technical group at BCD. Again, to name drop again some of our group and team members, Eugene and Darren and Josh and Alberto and the rest of this kind of category of group of people that have sat together and have said, okay, we have an idea. How do we proliferate that idea? So I would say it's not necessarily a rollout or anything with Dell or VMware, but we're utilizing the best in breed that we can. And right now, the best in breed for what we want from an architecture standpoint and a performance standpoint is those partners.
Right. And of course, I doubt at this moment in time we see either of those partners being surpassed technologically in what we're trying to do. I realize you never know, but
you don't. But I think, Scott, it's pretty clear who the front runner is. It doesn't take very many keystrokes on the keyboard in Google or Bing or wherever you want to search to find out who the big players are in the HC market and really HCI market. And really what we're trying to do is build that enterprise or that flagship product for ourselves that fits our market, the security market. And that security market is not just video. Yes, there's a huge component of that. That's the VMS side, that's recording video to disk. But there's so many other parts and pieces of that, building automation, and you have nurse call. We have a customer, as you know, Scott, that wants to load a bunch of critical infrastructure pieces onto a multi-node environment. Doesn't really care about long-term data, but it's just the high availability that becomes very important to them, and not having to roll a truck at 2 o'clock in the morning to some site that has very, very high security that we can't get into. So again, I think your point about not, yes, is it possible somebody else comes up with a better deployment or a better strategy? Sure. But at this time, we're leading with the best.
And I guess that means the onus is on all of us to make sure we all stay as best in breed.
I agree.
You made an interesting reference as the last questioner referenced other back-end architectures. Would you say, or do we have the ability using Revolve to use existing infrastructure if, for say, a customer had an HCI provider that wasn't supporting their product, or had pieces of that product that maybe they felt like they could reuse? Are we in a position to help them?
Yeah, I mean, we have a rescue program that was developed by this team as well to help alleviate those pain points. Please contact us if you have an end user that finds himself in a state of disarray with regard to their current infrastructure or their current deployment. But yeah, we want to try and utilize parts and pieces that make sense. Obviously, there's a lot of due diligence that goes along with that. But yeah, we do have a full program of that. I believe it's even posted on the Revolve website. And if somebody has specific questions with regards to an existing infrastructure or an existing deployment, please don't hesitate to contact one of us at the Revolve team.
Josh, I think you wanted to add to that potentially?
Well, Scott, if you could, Scott, and I can do it if you want, but something we didn't cover was on the Deep Store's different product lines. We started with the Deep Store Pluses, where the idea came from, and then we worked backwards from there. Maybe just a 10,000-foot view of what the difference is between the three of them and why we did what we did.
Sure, I will be happy to do that, and stick around so you can correct me, when I make an inevitable error. One thing I will close out with on the rescue program, which involves, obviously, if you have a Dell R740 sitting around, as well as the rest of us, that could be potentially reused. Likewise, I want to make clear that our goal in delivering Revolve out into the market is not a force-fed solution, but rather a solution that's adaptable. So if a customer owns a giant pile of, VMware licensing due to an enterprise agreement with VMware, we are more than happy to use that license. If they have their own Windows servers license, great, we can more than happy to use that as well. It's not about trying to create an environment where it has to be used the way we say it has to be used. It has to be used the way that is best for the customer, which means they have things we can use, great. Now, Josh's 40,000-foot flyover, very simply put, the Deep Store itself, let's go right in the middle of our product line. The Deep Store product itself, high availability, fully redundant, utilizes a RAID configuration on the storage itself. The main difference between it and the Deep Store Plus is simply in the fact that the data protection, the actual recorded data protection on the Deep Store Plus, is effectively doubled than what we do with a regular Deep Store. So we are also providing a level of physical protection with Deep Store Plus that is not in the standard Deep Store. Deep Store Lite is really, as was mentioned before, we believe our throughput numbers are going to be quite spectacular on the Deep Store and the Deep Store Plus. The Deep Store Lite is a slightly lesser brain, if you will, and a slightly lesser amount of overall storage, although still expandable well into the petabyte range. But it's incorrect to think of it as sort of a starter kit for getting into HCI, because it's still a full HCI system. It's just designed for a smaller infrastructure, smaller number of cameras, smaller amount of throughput. Of course, it can be expanded, and obviously all of our products as they currently exist are interworkable. So you can have a Deep Store and a Deep Store Lite and a Deep Store Plus all chugging away. In fact, we've already had a customer who has a Deep Store Plus effectively cut in half and put in different locations. So they all will work well together. And Josh, if I missed anything, jump in, but I think that's probably about where we want to go with that would be my guess.
Yeah, I think the only other point I want to touch on, Scott, is the Deep Store Plus does have the two storage systems. As we were building this out, we all looked at each other and go, when's the last time you had an actual storage failure, that has dual controllers and things like that? So the Deep Store Plus is more of a peace of mind than anything, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point, Josh. Yeah, good point. Hey, Scott, there's one more thing that I wanted to bring up before you get this moving forward with Marine. I think Darren is on the line, and Darren wants to, or if you can unmute him anyway, Scott. I think he was added as a presenter.
He was. Now, as much as, no one really wants to ever unmute Darren, I will be happy to.
Just keep the button handy in case you have to mute him again. Let's just go with that.
Let me just let everybody know, Darren is also one of our whiz technical people. I'm sure he has a really cool title. I actually don't know what it is. I do know he's one of the smartest networking people that I've ever met, especially when it comes to VMware. So I'll bring him in, and then if you have a seatbelt, I would put it on.
Okay.
Darren, are you there?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
So he has the mute button ready, just so you know.
Fair enough. I'm going to keep it really simple. I really wanted to go back and add to the why we decided to move away from the scale compute platform. There were a lot of attributes to scale that were really beneficial to the market, which included the simplicity aspect, that you could spin up VMs effortlessly and not have a lot of overhead associated with that. There was a downside too. In the way that it stored the data and the duplication that it did, it literally took your data store and cut it in half because it stored it in 2 places. So if you were paying for 500 terabytes, you're getting 250. And then to handle the failover as we move forward, it had to reserve an additional 15%. So the decision to move away from it wasn't, so much that we didn't like the simplicity. We didn't feel it was almost marketable because you were losing upwards of 65% of the storage, which
Can you sell that?
It made it very difficult to sell.
Can you give us an idea of what you estimate a standard deep store will pay in terms of storage overhead?
So you are going to have some overhead, but it's more in line with traditional RAID 6. You create multiple banks or linear volumes. And so in a bank of 14 drives, you're going to lose 2. So it's much, much less. It's certainly not 65%.
Gotcha. So I mean, we're talking the normal RAID 6 range, 14, 17%-ish.
Correct.
Very good. Very good. Darren, from your perspective, since we've got you on here, where are we going with all this? Again, in a very general sense, are we just scratching the surface of what we can do with this product in this industry?
Absolutely. We're absolutely just scratching the surface of what we can do. And the development and optimization and feature sets that are going into development from the VMware side and their team literally made it a very attractive partner to go to. And the fact that when you look at the second question that came out is kind of losing the simplicity from what we saw on the scale side, that can be overcome very simply by creating template infrastructure. When you build an optimized archiver for Genetec, you can save that template. And so an integrator can choose from that template that's a known good entity and spin up new archivers on their own without having to become a guru at VMware.
Oh, I lied. It is kind of an easy button.
So well said, by the way. That was much more finely articulated than my response, but thank you.
Darren, thank you